I'm not happy, Bob. Not happy. In the recent D23 Expo, it's finally been confirmed that Animal Kingdom is trading one of its classic beloved attractions for an IP that doesn't make any sense. If I had a nickel for every time that's happened to this dark ride, I'd have 2 nickels. Which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice. Disney has been floating this idea around for the better part of 5 years like a log of yesterday's breakfast that somebody forgot to flush. I believe it started out as a leak or something, but ended up being talked about at the last expo where Disney was clearly on the back foot, throwing balled up feces at the wall trying to make anything stick. At that expo, they threw out a bunch of concept art and said, "See, we're doing stuff, I promise. I mean, Tron got made, right?" Yes, thank you, dude who makes more in a month than I'll ever make in my entire life. Tron got made after years upon years of sitting around and collecting dust. And mind you, this ride's a clone, not even an original creation. I know you Imagineer guys are hard at work doing anything in your power to ruin the legacy of Walt Disney. I know you guys are exhausted after stripping away the soul of every park until the map looks exactly like a Disney Plus main menu. Maybe you guys should take a D23 and me to figure out if this company's leadership still has any connection to the man himself. But why be so harsh about it, you might ask? They're doing what any company should do, which is drive profits, right? Well, here's the thing. They're already driving profits by simply existing. Every single second that ticks by, Disney makes millions of dollars in net profit. It is this idea that makes it incredibly hard to believe that somebody up top decided that they need to shove Indiana Jones into Animal Kingdom. That sentence itself already sounds alarming. A movie series whose only connection to animals is the ants that squeal like pigs, the CGI monkeys from that Coldplay music video, and snake fear-mongering. The park runners must have gotten chilled monkey brains recently. If you didn't know, Animal Kingdom opened up on Earth Day in 1998. The park opened as an ode to nature. Its thesis statement was one of teaching people of all ages that environmental conservation is cool. It wasn't just boring lab coat science, it was science that you could see the direct impact of when you walk outside every day. They even have sections of the park like Rafiki's Planet Watch, which lets you observe an actual lab and see real-life examples of what biologists do. Every Disney park revolves around its own thesis. Epcot is about how technology connects the world and how unity helps the progression of mankind. But they're not all up their own ass like that. Sometimes the thesis is as simple as, what if a lagoon got hit by a typhoon? And it still works because the theming will justify itself as soon as you lay eyes on it. However, my main gripe with present day is that they have twisted these theses to the point of breaking. They've been bulldozing or repurposing rides in areas that used to be landmark attractions and also were designed to be a main part of their parks. Maelstrom, a boat ride that took you through Norway's mythical stories into the present day, was scrapped several years ago. The ride was designed a few years after the park opened in order to flesh out the Norway section of the park. It wasn't the most thrilling or impressive ride out there, but riding it certainly gave me interest in Norwegian history as a child. Such was the intent of the ride. This ride was then filleted and disemboweled in order to forcefully shove a new Disney property into. Frozen was a popular pop album that's dressed up as an animated film. It was loosely based on a book that loosely took place in Norway, written by a Danish man. I guess the argument is that it's still based on a Scandinavian story, so technically it's not too out of place. I disagree. Frozen does not belong in the World Showcase because it defeats the purpose of the World Showcase. Now I know what you're thinking. This happened years ago, why would you still be angry about it? The Frozen ride turned out to be a massive success, just look at how full the line is every day. Though, I would have a question for you. When was the last time you saw any line that wasn't packed like cattle at any ride in a Disney park? Was this 120-minute wait attraction really worth sacrificing the entire atmosphere of the World Showcase? Now you can't walk through the well-themed streets of Norway without that giant cartoon head peeking out through the buildings like Attack on Titan. This is only one example of Disney's master plan to slowly transform the parks into currently marketable status. Instead of improving or iterating on what they have, they would rather replace. Now let's get on to the topic that inspired this entire rant. Dinosaur was already a ride that proves my point exactly. Countdown to Extinction was an original ride concept which delved into the fantasy that every child had, and every adult wished were real. The ability to time travel back to the time of dinosaurs and see them in person. This ride threw a horror spin into the mix, much like Universal's Jurassic Park ride. The ride was great for what it set out to do, scare the piss and shit out of little Timmy. Not only was the ride pitch black, but it shook you around like a can of Copenhagen. If that wasn't enough, they made an animatronic Carnotaurus that looked like a demon from hell. Now here's the part where Disney's powers that be had something significant happen. As of the year 2000, a certain man named Bob would now be named Prince to the throne of Disney. He would work closely under King Mikey, and it would be pure coincidence that shortly after Bob took office that a certain trend would begin. Back in the 90s and early 2000s, there was a cold war of companies attempting to take control of the animated film market. Back in the old days, animators had to spend countless hours hand-drawing their 2D animation. With 3D animation streamlining certain aspects of animation, it became much more widespread around this time. Dinosaur was one of Disney Animation Studios' first attempts at a feature-length 3D animated film. There were others before it, but this one stood out because of its photorealistic aesthetic and blending of real-life environments. The original concept was a Walking with Dinosaurs style documentary film without dialogue. The story would be told through the experiences of our main characters and their interaction with the cruel prehistoric world around them. The film would likely have touched on the final moments of the dinosaurs before extinction and had a powerful message about how you could spend the time you have left on Earth. But Chairman Mikey came down and said, "Nah, the kids will be bored, put a bunch of celebrities in it." The ride ended up being on the darker side, no pun intended, but was given a goofy sci-fi twist to give the riders a reason to be riding in a car in the distant past. The film ended up having an identity crisis that meant that the story never got fully fleshed out enough to call this movie even close to other Disney or Pixar films. It tried to be a comedy sometimes, it didn't work. It tried to be serious sometimes, that just ended up being boring. The parts of the film that were supposed to touch on horror never really went far enough in that direction to be effectively frightening. The movie ended up pulling the viewer in so many different directions that they all ended up in the middle. Most would call it a minor success with nothing too terrible about it to call it a bad film. As the kids say these days, it was mid. Though along with the release of this film came a rebranding of the Countdown to Extinction ride. The ride would now be called Dinosaur and would be loosely themed after the animated film. As in, only a few small details changed, with the front entrance plaza being the most significant. They didn't really put much effort into tying these two things together. In fact, the rebrand only really hurt the reputation of the ride in the long run. Now when a kid sees the movie first and wants to ride the ride, they'll get extremely disappointed when it gives them something completely different. Dinoland USA was never the strongest area of the park. The fair area of this land was always by intent supposed to look cheap. However, in the process of trying to look cheap, they actually became cheap with it. There were only 2 rides in this fair somehow. One of them went to the scrapyard because Disney couldn't be bothered to add proper safety features for its employees after a few incidents, allegedly. So it's not too far out of the question that this area needs a retheme. However, what it did not need was an invasion of IPs that have nothing to do with animals or conservation. Sure, the Dino Fair did a poor job of that, and Dinosaur was a fictional story anyway, but hey, do you know what kids will always love? Dinosaurs. It really is that simple. The play area was one of the coolest places to hang out as a kid because I could pretend I was digging up dinosaurs like the people I read about in my little picture books. Dinosaurs have everything to do with our current ecosystem, and some of them are still around today. Giving kids this area to run around and go, "That one's a Stegosaurus," was awesome. And a theme park about animals, it was great to have an area dedicated to the distant past. It should inspire you even more to cherish the cool animals that we have around us today, because they could be gone in the future. This area being rethemed to Central and South America is extremely disappointing. The IPs that they're using to change this park for marketing relevance aren't relevant to the idea behind Animal Kingdom. Avatar was already a sidestep in the wrong direction for the park, but at least the film had nature conservation at its heart. While it sounds like I'm just clinging to the past because the Dinosaur ride was my favorite dark ride for my entire life, I know it's not just my personal feelings that make me despise the decisions that the company is making. It's been a long time since that first Countdown to Extinction IP takeover, and now these takeovers are happening on an almost yearly basis. Disney's leadership has showed a clear pattern of not caring about what got the company where it is in the first place. Disneyland was a celebration of a man who coined the term Imagineer. Walt may have been a classic wealthy scumbag businessman behind the scenes, but his life's message was one that everyone can relate to. He wanted to reward those with the imagination to inspire change. He wanted to make them feel seen and heard. In the ride, The Carousel of Progress, you can see his own life's thesis firsthand. This ride starts you out in the past where people's lives are being made better by the inventions of others. The very idea of this ride is hearing these people in the past say, "Well, life can't get better than this, huh?" and chuckling because you, the rider, knows that technology has evolved so much further. The ride takes you through decades of this phenomenon repeating itself every time, all the way into the distant future. This distant future used to seem impossible, but even some of our present-day technology surpasses what they came up with back then for the ride. This is Walt's dream, to look upon the past and see the progression of mankind as a stepping stone in history. He wants to inspire you to be Alexander Graham Bell, Nikola Tesla, or Albert Einstein. And this stepping stone that we're all currently in will be surpassed by the next one in the future, because of those of us who are brave enough to follow their dreams. This will happen whether we like it or not, or should I say, whether we're around to enjoy it or not. Erasing the past in these theme parks in order to market to modernity should be the last thing on the company's mind. They would be nowhere without all of their classic attractions and films. They will continue down this path as if they were blind to the irony that one man's name that they stitch onto a $79.99 t-shirt is the same one man's dream that they're trampling over in order to maximize profits. I don't expect that anything with the company's leadership will change in the near future. I don't expect that this video will change anyone's mind either. And I really don't expect them to stop acquiring properties and slowly consuming all of media just to wring out everything that it's worth before dropping its dried husk onto the ground and stepping on it. I just wanted to reflect on the current state of the mouse, because I like to believe that they're not completely lost. They just have a lot of soul searching to do, but good luck because Disney's Soul came out in 2020. Alright, I'm getting out of here. My name's Sleemo and thank you for listening to my poodoo. Have a good one.